Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March Nekoosa School District School Board meeting. Mr. Scheer, could we start with a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Giese.
Present.
Mr. Schmidt.
Here.
Mr. Scheer's here. Mr. Freeman. Via phone.
He's here.
Mr. Freeman is on the phone tonight and
Mr. Husted.
present.
Sounds like you're here.
Thank you. Could everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we have a virtue card reading. Mr. Scheer, you going to provide that for us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Tonight, moderation. Moderation is creating a healthy balance in your life between work and play, rest and exercise. You don't overdo or get swept away by the things you like. You use your self-discipline to take charge of your life and your time. You are practicing moderation when you get enough of what you need, no more, no less. When you use self-discipline to stop yourself from overdoing. When you take care of your health. When you balance work and play in your life. Know your limits and set boundaries for yourself. Are content with enough. Affirmation of moderation. I am moderate. I am thankful and content to get what I need. I use my time and energy wisely. My life is well balanced. Moderation.
Thanks, Bob. In September of 2012, the board developed the following guidelines that we work by, and I'll read those now. The first one, we will work together as a team, establishing an environment of trust and respect, which will serve as a role model for the community, despite the challenges. The second guideline, we will balance the needs of our district while remaining cognizant of our community's ability for financial support. And our third guideline, we will work collaboratively toward the common goal of student learning, educational innovation, and instilling the desire of lifelong learning with the involvement of community stakeholders. So those are our Board of Education guidelines. Next on the agenda, as always, public comments. Would anyone have any comments that they would like to share tonight at the meeting? No? Nothing? Okay, going once, going twice? Okay, then we're moving right on. Next on the agenda is a math presentation. Are we ready for that?
Yes, our high school math teachers are here. So last month, when we were here, the question came up about Common Core. And the district has used a core math book in the past, so there was some conversation about, are we still doing core? So I talked to the math department at the high school, and they actually have been, their names have come up quite often as we have conversations about the work that's happening in all of the PLCs across the district. But certainly they've been really doing some cool things to reach out and help all learners grow in math. So they're here tonight to share the great work that they've been doing. So come on forward, show us your stuff. And so they're prepared to answer any questions that you have, and then just kind of share with you what's happening at the high school. Because math, I think, perhaps looks a bit different today than what it did when we were in a high school math classroom.
Okay.
So Nathan Strelo,
Yes.
you all remember him, Charlie Dewar, and Mary Bembo. Good to see you guys.
Well, the process that we've been working on the last couple of years in the math department has started in the PLCs, and we sat down with the Common Core state standards, and we looked to find what our essentials were for the high school. Off those essentials, we went through and we created study guides. Give me one of mine. And you can talk about one of yours too. So, and just click on the first one. This is what the students get for each lesson. On here, the lesson, what Common Core standard that they are tied to is listed on the study guide, so the students have an idea of what we are going to be covering in that lesson. And then in the lesson, there are various notes that they're going to be taking. We do examples, and we tie in a whole bunch of different resources. We're not just using one textbook, we are using web resources, we're using textbooks, we're using our expertise and other videos out on the internet. So, go down. Does this one have an example? Oh, yeah, so right here, no, it's not that one, that's just a worksheet. So, there are links to websites that are going to give examples of what extra examples that they can go to and use to help them further their understanding either at home while they're working at school. To help break it down a little bit more, what we've also been working on in our PLC is I can statements. So to go along with the I can statements, or the study guides, we go through and we break down the Common Core standards into more friendly terms for the students, so they actually know what they actually need to do. So this one here, they're finding the slope between two lines, finding the distance. Also, what I started doing is I give this to them the first day of the lesson. They go through and rate themselves to see how they're doing at that point. I also tell them what questions on the quiz are going to be related to that, so they can kind of see the importance of each part. And then they go through and rate themselves right before the quiz, and then after the quiz comes back to them, they go through and actually grade themselves and see how they did on the question. So if they got everything right, they can rate themselves as a 4. If they had maybe a little bit wrong, made a minor mistake, they can give themselves a 3. So those are the I can statements. So that's where the study guides, I can statements kind of all come together. I'll let Charlie talk about some of his study guides that he uses in his classroom.
Thanks. This is an example of a study guide from the trigonometry pre-calculus course. I've got the standards listed here. Basically, there's a lot of different standards, and each lesson covers quite a few different standards from the Common Core. And so what I like to do with my study guides is I have the start of them, give them a pre-test, and the students can go on there. This is a Google Forms. They go in there, they take this pre-test. I get the data that's crunched into a Google Forms, and I can assess what their prior knowledge is before we get going on that. And then these links here are other assessments throughout. With my study guides, I like to do some front loading because there are some concepts that they've seen before, and when I go through and do the demonstration in class, I don't want that to be the first time that they've seen it. So before we get to the instruction, I usually have them go and watch a video and do some note-taking to front load for this. And so this is just one example of an online resource that I found to be pretty good. Yeah. But, well, okay. So with this, the arithmetic with complex numbers. So it has the written text for them, so you can read it if that's the type of learner that they are. They've got videos here, which once they jump into a video, they can take notes from that, they can watch different examples and so forth. There are guidance questions here, examples, self-tests. I'm going kind of quickly here, there's a lot to vocabulary terms, guided practice. But if I go back to my study guide, what I have along with that then is a Google document that go along with those, and so there's practice problems that they can do along with that right away. So they're front loading and they're getting some guided practice with this. Then I can assess where they're at. We have the in-class application. Do some different applied problems here. Everything is laid out in front of them with a tentative due date. If they need more time to grasp the topic, it gives me the flexibility to allow them more time and do more reteaching. So that's my study guides. One of the other things that we've been working on are the SLOs, which across the top here, the SLOs, that's our semester test to get a benchmark for what the kids' progress are. And so what we've been doing is all three of us have these different tests that we developed in our PLCs, and we have a spreadsheet so we can track the data. We've got the baseline data. Then after the first semester, we were able to see the improvements. These are in percentages. So day number 1, kids come in, they take their baseline assessment, and after the first semester you can see that there's quite a bit of growth. And I have a handful of kids that have already tested well enough to,
Yeah, if you see those scores, this is for the whole year material. Okay, so they tested at semester on everything for the year. So even, some of the scores still aren't very good. They've only learned half the material so far. So those scores are going to continue to improve.
So these student learning objectives, these are concepts the student should know by the end of the year.
Yes.
So you test at the beginning of the year to see where they are.
Yep.
And then, did you say quarterly or semester? Or
At the end of the semester.
Okay.
Yep.
And then each column here is broken into 3 parts. So right here, this is simplifying expressions with exponents. Okay. This is the guided teaching. Right now, Nate is passing out an example of RTI worksheets that we've developed. We've developed 3 RTI sheets for each one of these standards. We've got the guided with the teacher. We've got guided with students, or either in the GAR, the guided academic resource. So there's teachers that can help students to work on their skills. There's also student tutors that can help. So then this is like the first intervention. The second intervention is the right here. It shows that each one of these are little cells, so that once we get that first worksheet done, we can tabulate what their scores are. And then if they need more intervention, then we move it to the next tier. And then finally this one here is going to be the 3rd tier. But as you can see on the spreadsheet, okay, yeah, there's, if it's blocked out in green, that means the student has already met that skill. For example, okay, so equations in the real world, solving equations. You can see that there's a lot of green in this column. That's because we work a lot with applied problems, and so the kids come in with good prior knowledge for that. And so the NAs they're not applicable at this time. That's something we're going to teach second semester.
So when does the intervention occur? How do you know when intervention is needed?
Well, at this point, after the semester test, if they did not meet the proficient level for stuff that we've already covered, intervention.
Okay.
They're going to be having intervention. They're going to be getting these worksheets. Start off with number 1, number 2, number 3. I have a whole, this is jam-packed full of worksheets from, for intervention to give out to students this semester and try to build their skills on areas that they didn't quite grasp in the first semester.
So each one of these cells, for all 26 headings, we created a worksheet for each skill, for the three-tier intervention.
I do mine during advisory. Lately it's been on Monday and Tuesdays. I've been working with my freshmen, and I dib them. It's a worksheet that's been created at the high school. So I do problems with them first, and then they can take their notes, and then they go and they take an assessment on their own. If they do well enough, score, proficient, then I go in there and I use my spreadsheet as, I'll put an X because I guided them, I'm the teacher. If it was guided by a student, I'll put an X there so we know how they received the material. The I is where I use to write my scores. So I've had students that, now I'm seeing them the third time on the same concept, they haven't picked it up. But we have worksheets that are created, and that's what we do. So.
Awesome. So it's a guarantee. I mean, we're really trying to guarantee kids that they're getting those essentials.
Another thing that we spent a lot of time on, along with the study guides, is we developed the web pages. We've been allowed, Mr. Cum has given us time and has been very flexible on working with us to help put this together. And so some examples of this is the website for the trig pre-calculus. It's got all the different lessons on it, study guides, and my study guides are just, we each have our own preference on how we develop the study guides. I like to put everything right in there, so it's just, okay, you go there, you click, and then the study guide pops up and you're good to go. I showed you Mr. Stralo's. Let's see here.
Unit 1, where it says Unit 1.
Yeah. This is his study guide.
Oh, wait. Did you close it? Maybe it's where it says lesson 1.
Lesson 1.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Bemble has her website here that we've worked on together. Did you want me to open one of yours, students?
They can ask them if they want to see. They're there for you to see, but they're
Does
pretty
anybody
much
have
the same.
Any questions?
Well, could you just describe a little bit of what the classroom might look like today compared to when they were in school? The math classroom? What would they see and hear?
In my room, they'd see me running around. There's students doing so many different things. My mind's got to change, snap of a finger. They're working. Some of them are working alone, some are working in pairs, some of them are working in groups of 4, some of them are on the computer, some of them are on the textbook, some of them are making up works. There's a variety of things going on.
So it's really helping that, develop that independent, that responsible independence, I think.
And they're at different levels then? So some students could be working on one concept and some.
Some could be
students
working it depends how fast they're working on the study guides. It's at their own pace. Except we do have deadlines because we have to cover material. We can't let them sit there all year and say, I'm done, 1 week is done in a whole year. We can't do that. So there are deadlines. But they can get the material done at their own pace. Some students can work ahead, and study guides are up there. So,
And I found that the kids that are very involved with athletics or other extracurriculars, this allows them the freedom to work ahead. I have a couple different kids that they're working on the study guide before even handed out, because they know that the next couple of weeks is going to be pretty intense for them, and their time is going to be limited.
well, the other thing I like about it is if a student had me this year, now they're going to Nate next year, they can always go back to this website because they're there. They know they're there.
Nice.
So if they need to go back and review a concept, they're available, which is nice.
Nice.
I forgot to mention one thing about the RTI worksheets. We created folders for every single one of them, so that all worksheets that they work on are put in their folder, and it's gonna go with them from year to year, from teacher to teacher, so that, you know, next year they come up to a topic that we knew should have been covered last year, we can pull this out and say, yeah, it says here that you went through the intervention and understood how it went at that point. So we're putting a little bit more trust in them that they're going to retain this information, and then we'll have worksheets to pull for them if they need that extra practice in the next year also.
So, Mr. Freeman, did you have any questions?
Well, as far as presentation, about the only thing I could hear is when you talk, Doug or Terry, I could not hear the teachers. So, no, I really don't have any questions.
So, and you know everything that they're doing is grounded in the Common Core standards.
So this web pages that they're using, they can use that at home as well? They don't have to, it just can't be, not only here at school?
Correct.
Okay.
If I can just comment, just two quick things on this. One, you've heard several times in board meetings that we're trying to work more and more, make education retooled from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. Again, it's a phrase that sort of is out there so much it's almost tried at times. One of the things it's impressive here is here's some tools that allow that to happen. If you just take any student and say, okay, here you go for it. You know, they need some scaffolds, they need some things to make it safe, so you have a gradual release of responsibility. That's one of the things that these study guides have evolved over the years. As they've gotten feedback and say, okay, we tried this, you need a little more support, let's do that. And you're seeing probably about a 4th, 5th generation study guide by this point, and it continues to evolve as that, but as they're trying to it. The other big thing to point out is with the, you can do that because their focus is on what students are learning, not what they taught. And by tracking this, not just for the sake of the SLOs that you saw, but also just at every pre-test and post-test for the unit. If you know where your students are, it's a lot easier to give them the freedom to go there. And so you don't, and so you can, if you can verify their learning, it's a lot easier to help them have multiple paths to whatever that is. And so, again, I just find this an impressive example of how, here's some real-world structures of how to go ahead and enable that responsible release to the students, but still be able to do everything you need to.
So one other question too, how does the old core book fit with the work that you do now? So that people have a kind of an understanding. You use pieces of it, right? I forget the name of the application piece. Nathan and I were trying to think of that the other day. Wasn't there a name of like an application piece for?
Oh, the CPMP tools, the
CPMP.
software package that comes with it, that's just, you know, it's just tools to help you, help visual, you know, they're like manipulatives. That's what that program is more.
And we go through and use, you know, there were example problems in there that we still use.
Yeah.
There was a lot of real-world applications that we can pull in also from there. You know, it's not in all, it's not, everything's not based out of that anymore, but we just pull it as a resource now.
It's kind of a hybrid model. Well, and I think the questions that kids are seeing on the assessments are very, very closely related to those real-world application pieces that they study in the core book. So what other questions you guys have?
Well, I just, you know, with the with the approach with the Common Core and, you know, some of the arguments within the state, you know, and the way that you guys have created a hybrid, I would say, would you agree with that? In preparing our students for the future and preparing them for, you know, be it the AP level, also with regards to the ACT testing, that all of those tests are being designed with this Common Core in mind, and that their success on these tests is based on your application of these principles. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of work.
Up until the time of the bid expiration. So for example, your sale took place at 10:30 this morning. The time we see here is Eastern time, says about 11:30. But you can see that you had 6 bidders, and the bid number column shows us how many bids they put in. So they put in a total of 17 bids to try to get into first place. It just so happens that William Blair won this morning's bid and only had to put in 1 bid to win. But you can see that Morgan Keegan, for example, put in 2 different bids to try to get to first place. Piper put in 4, Stiefel put in 7, Hutch put in 2. So a lot of nice competitive activity we saw this morning, with again the winning bidder being William Blair at a TIC, or true interest cost, of a 3.35%. We'll talk in a minute about how we came up with the par amount and how this fits into the overall financing plan. But at this point, that would be the lowest bid that we got this morning. Really pleased with the amount of bidding activity that we saw. Any questions on that platform and how that works? It's actually pretty exciting. I don't know what that says about me, but again, it's really exciting. So the issue structure, par amount is $11,045,000, and again, we'll talk about how we got to that in just a minute. The purpose, this is non-bank qualified debt because it exceeds $10 million, and again, it's the long-term financing phase of funding energy efficiency projects in what was phase 2 of that. The sale date, again, and board approval is this evening, March 10th. The closing date will be April 1st, and these proceeds will be used to pay off the short-term notes that were required to issue ahead of this per state statutes. You'll make principal payments in March 1, 2016 through 2033. You'll be able to prepay the 2024 through 33 maturities in 2023 if you find yourself in an interest rate environment where that would be advantageous. Your Standard & Poor's rating was affirmed as an A+. I did not distribute that credit report again tonight because it really hasn't changed much since you saw it last time, and I know you all read it then. So we won't have to hand that out again. But that's really a great credit rating, and having that has a lot to do with why we saw the competition we did this morning on the bids. Financial advisor, of course, was PMA Securities. Winning bidder, as we saw on the previous page, was William Blair with a true interest rate of 3.35%. That includes all costs of issuance. They pay all costs of issuance on your behalf, so it's all included in the interest rate. The next page, I realize it's difficult to see, but there were a lot of phases to this. So this puts it all in front of you, from left to right. If we take a look at this, of course, we're looking at the energy efficiency financings. Each phase of your energy efficiency financings had 2 financing steps to it. So there were 4 financing steps total. We had the $2.5 million short-term notes. We took those out with long-term financing. We had the $12,125,000 short-term notes, and now we're taking those out with long-term financing. So that's what you're seeing inside the box. Outside the box, you're seeing debt that already exists in Fund 39. These being energy efficiency projects under Act 32, you'll be able to levy for this debt service outside of revenue limits. So we almost think of it like Fund 39 debt. We almost think of it like referendum approved debt because you can levy outside of revenue limits. So we want to benchmark it against that type of debt issuance. You also had your levy of $1 million that you put into 2015 to help pay some of this debt service. We're going to use that $1 million right away to pay down part of the note anticipation notes, the $12,125,000 note anticipation notes. That's why you're issuing only $11,045,000 this evening. Why issue more than you need in this long-term financing, pay interest on that, when we can just go ahead and pay down a portion of that note right away with available levy funds. This column right here called Fund 39 plus Energy Efficiency Debt Levy, That is really our key column, and that's the column, and that would be, see, I can hardly see, 4th from the right. So go in 4 from the right, the first column outside the box. That's the column that's really important to us, and the one that we plugged into your long-range planning model that Scott Growler works on with you. Showed that to Lynn, and made sure that we had a good assurance that 2016 will not be higher than 2015. And kind of looking at it on an overall basis. So know that these numbers are plugged into that larger big picture model, and making sure that we have that constant or declining levy going into 16. We obviously don't know yet, where we'll land in the biennial budget. We have Governor Walker's proposal on the table that may or may not change. Hopefully will change. So we kind of have to know that we have some moving parts still, but I think we've planned conservatively enough as you go into 16 with this. So this is the last phase. Long road. I think we started talking about this 2 years ago, got more serious about it 1 year ago, and here we are finally completed all of it.
So administration, if any questions, administration is asking approval for this long-term debt with a roll call. But Michelle is happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, I got a question, because I know I'm gonna get the question. So, with this 11,045,000, this is one bond. The other bond is for the first project, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're taking basically two bonds, keeping them separate, and making payments for both?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so the payments you'll make over the long haul are really on these two issues here. The long-term permanent financing, we're calling it, for the 2.5 million, 2,525,000.
Yeah,
And then permanent financing for phase 2, the 11,045,000. So that's your long-term debt that will be outstanding. The notes will be gone.
And the reason we did this, we could have taken out one bond for both of them, but we had a pretty good savings if we did it this way.
Yeah.
So we decided to split it out and do the extra work on the front end, so we could have savings in the future then.
okay, then I will also be asked, what's the payment schedule on them, so.
And that is exactly what you're looking at.
Right here.
So again, I mean, the key column here is, this is all the debt that is theoretically could be levied for outside of revenue limits.
Okay.
So it's the first column on the outside of the box. It's called Fund 39 plus EEE debt levy, existing plus new. So that is, the new debt brought on by the energy efficiency projects in addition to what is already outside of revenue limits. So that is potentially the entire tax burden you would have outside of revenue limits.
Okay, so that's per fiscal year, that would be the payment we would be paying? in?
Correct.
Okay.
And again, that includes existing, so,
Right,
we could give you a separate schedule that's only energy efficiency, but that's really a picture of the whole debt burden.
Which is
Okay.
still less than what we had in the past.
Yeah,
with
you're
the
still going down.
building we were paying
Right.
for. Okay,
Yeah. You're still going down from where you
Yep.
were 13, 14.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Questions, Joe? Questions? We're looking for a motion and a second to authorize the issuance and sale of $11,045,000 worth of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2015B.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Mr. Shear, roll call, please.
Ryan?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Bob says yes. Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Freeman, yes.
Doug?
Yes. Okay.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, next item on the agenda is a discussion concerning some property that was previously owned by Pacific International. That property is west of the, west of the high school land that the high school track sits on. There are There are 2 lots, or plots, I should say. Is it plots or lots?
Lots.
Lots, two lots. And Mr. Jeff Myers from Wood Trust Bank is here to kind of lead us through a discussion. The reason this is on the agenda is because there has been some interest from the school district in the past concerning the possibility of purchasing this property. And Jeff notified Mr. Whitmore about a week ago that the property is for sale. And so we invited Jeff here to the school board meeting to kind of talk to us about the property, and we'll kind of see where the discussion goes. At this point, there isn't any plan there will be no vote or anything like that to purchase land tonight. This discussion is simply all informational. So with that, Mr. Myers, thank you for coming to the board.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jeff Myers. I'm the Senior Vice President of Wood Trust Bank, Senior Loan Officer for the bank. I was involved in the foreclosure action on the Pacific International property. It was a long process that was finalized in February of 2015 when Judge Wolf of Wood County signed the sheriff's sale bid that we made back in, I believe it was December of 2014. The property is 2 parcels or 2 lots. Total acreage size is just under 20 acres. The 2 lots, lot number 1 is just under 9 acres. It's got a 15,000 square foot office building. It's got, I believe it's 10 garage stalls, storage area, and then a parking lot that covers most of the property outside of the building and the garage. The second parcel is vacant land. I think it's around 10, 11 acres in total, and that's directly south of the building 8-acre parcel of land. Throughout this process, the bank had to go through various processes to determine the value of the land. When we lent against the land, the original appraisal was in the $1,009,000, $1,008,000 range. That was back in 2006, I believe. Of recent years, the former owner had obtained appraisals in those ranged anywhere from $1 million, I believe it was $1,001,000, $1,002,000, somewhere in there. We had obtained when we started the foreclosure action, we obtained an appraisal on the property. It wasn't what I would call a qualified appraisal. It was a third-party evaluation. They had determined it to be right around $800,000, $900,000, and that was in 2012, I believe. As we came closer to the sheriff's sale, we enlisted a well-known real estate agent in the Wisconsin Rapids, Nekoosa area, very familiar with commercial properties. And at that point in time, due to the condition and economic condition of our area and the amount of commercial property on the market, they came back and said that the 2 parcels combined were somewhere around $450,000 to $500,000. So the bank, I tell you that story because I'm not going to stand here and think that we'll get $2 million when we originally lent on the property, that's what it's worth. We know it's far from that. We're going to be realistic, and we think it's in the $450,000 to $500,000 range, and willing to consider serious offers kind of in that area. In terms of where we're at right now, I have not signed the listing contract with a real estate agent yet. Most commercial properties require around a 10% commission with the real estate agent, and we've had verbal discussions with an agent, and I've talked to him that Nekoosa district may be interested in the property, and I need to work out some things with that realtor. They may help us, advise us through this process if you're interested, but they won't be at that 10% commission. So we'll be able to save quite a bit of money by this broker agreeing to a much smaller commission if the district was interested in the property. If the district has no interest in the property, it's our intent to quickly list it and start marketing the property for sale. We've had some calls, I would say they're lukewarm in terms of interest. There's some former employees of Pacific International that are interested in potentially leasing or buying the property at some point. I'm just not sure that that's a solid lead. But we're going to do whatever we can to market the property. It's our intention to try to liquidate the property as quickly as possible. The real estate taxes alone are around $30,000 a year. And for the bank to hold it long-term would be, well, we'd be willing to take much less today than pay $30,000 a year for the foreseeable future. So it's our intention to try to liquidate it as quickly as possible, and we'll take the highest bid essentially at that point in time. So that's a little bit about a background on the property and kind of our strategy of holding the property. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
So you said that the property as a whole is in the 400 to 500,000. What are the breakdowns between the two parcels?
The building parcel was in the 400,000 range, and the land itself was anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000, depending on the interest of the person, whether it be multifamily housing. They may pay a little bit more because of the cash flows that can come from the property versus like a housing development. They may have to pay a little bit less because the cash flows would be much less.
Do you know what the split on the taxes was between the two parcels?
I could only estimate. I believe the land was in the 5,000 to 6,000 range, and the building itself was the majority in the 24,000 to 25,000 range.
Are there any back taxes to worry about with the purchase?
There is not. The bank had paid. There was back taxes going back to 2011, and we paid those all current at the time of sheriff's sale. And the taxes for 2014 that were due January 31st, 15 have been paid in full also.
Okay.
Do you know what the current zoning is for the lot?
I believe I'm not sure for the lots. I don't know.
You could get that to me.
I can definitely
Sure.
get that to you. Yeah.
Jeff, you mentioned urgency about liquidating the lots. Can you give us any idea as far as timing? You mentioned that there could be maybe something worked out before you list, but what are you talking about as far as timing? Are you talking 2 weeks or a month, or just to get an idea?
In terms of listing the property, depending on the interest level and level of discussion after this meeting, obviously not right now, but if in the next week you guys got back to me and said, we have serious interest, I would likely hold off on the listing contract. If within the next week you guys kick it around and may be interested, may not be, I'm probably going to go ahead with the listing contract. The sooner the better that we can get going on it. Moving into the spring, summertime is really the best time to start listing properties.
Sure.
Would it be possible to list the property and have the Nekoosa School District listed as an exclusion on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't hear the last part of your question.
I asked if it was possible to, if they did decide to list the property, let's say next week, that the Nekoosa School District be listed as an exclusion on there, so if it were to go to listing, that if Nekoosa School District were to buy it, that they wouldn't be paying commission.
Very good.
And to expand on that, that's kind of the discussion I've been having with this realtor, and he won't give us a full exclusion, but he will give us a discounted exclusion, and in return he provides services in the negotiation process.
Good, and if the board has any other questions that come up, I can email you them.
Absolutely.
Continue, and how many want to go back to the comprehensive school. And just to give you a little background information on that, through discussion with other charter schools in the area, both high school, middle school, and elementary, when parents have the option, there are definitely people who started off and said, oh, that's not really for me, and want to go back. And there are some that want to continue and stay, and we've also had additional interest from inside and outside the school district. So we anticipate there being a number of students who want to go back to the comprehensive school, and right now that stands about 20% that either are undecided or they want to go back, but it still is in flux, we'll say. And then we want to open that opportunity in grades 4 through 8 because, like we said, we want to still serve the population that's there, as well as invite some new students in, which that number would, we don't know what that number of new students would be into the school yet. So I guess we have the governance council and myself and some teachers here to answer whatever questions you have about that. So what questions are there?
So you're looking at possibly 12, 13 kids maybe that would not continue? Is that?
Yeah, that's probably, yeah.
Okay. So
That's
that
accurate.
would
That's-
open it up for that many more new ones to whatever source, either new fourth graders or new kids that come in from
Yeah.
some.
Out of this, we started off the year with 66 students this year. One student moved away, just family job, and they moved away to a different district. So we are at 65 currently. We have a couple on the waiting list. Some are siblings, which as per our contract are exempt from the lottery, so they would get in, and then we would have a lottery for the remaining number of students. We've generated some open enrollment interest. We've got 3 additional open enrollments that have asked, 1 that's on the waiting list and 2 others that have given or presented questions about it. So, and I anticipate there being interest from our current Nekoosa school district students as well.
Clint, with the students that, or families that said, I don't know if I'm gonna stay with the STEM Academy, I might wanna go back to the traditional school, did they give reasons why, or do you know why?
Some just think that their student may be better served. Some families are worried about, I want them to be prepared for high school, and we want to hold some listening sessions to assure families that this is preparing them for high school. This is a different way that's definitely going to prepare their student for that next step, as well as enhance some problem solving and basic skills in that respect, so that they're not, I guess that's not a reason. We don't want that to be a reason. Now, if they think that their student learns better in the comprehensive school, that's fine. Sure. Also on that, the same survey, we've had numerous really positive comments, like, my student loves going to school this year, and this school has made such a miraculous change in my son, that I'm really happy with what CWSA has provided. We know that it's a work in progress, and we still have areas to grow in, and we knew that was going to happen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen overnight, 1 year's not a test.
So,
I've got another question, if you don't mind, because I want to understand how the 2 kids are on the waiting list, right now? Or
there's 3 on the waiting list.
3 on the wait, okay.
Oh, is there 8? But there's 3 third graders then
Yes.
on the waiting list. 3 third graders on the waiting list.
Okay.
2 of them are siblings from students who are already there, and they would come in. One is a student from outside the district, and then the rest are students from within the districts. 2 of those students are siblings, that want to get in. They're in grades 5 and 6 or something, that didn't jump on board last year, but now have shown interest.
So how does that work? If a student is on the waiting list, do they get like the first priority the next year?
No.
Or does the whole waiting list concept start over? Do they have to like reapply? Or
Well,
how
students
does it
that
work?
are already there will get
Right, but,
first option.
yeah, the ones that are, you said there's some on a waiting list, right?
Yep.
So,
On that waiting list, there are, or maybe waiting list isn't the proper term, maybe
Pool.
application pool. There are siblings on that waiting list, like I said, who will get in. And then everybody else will be thrown in the hat, so to speak. At our last lottery, it was a bag.
Even if they got on the waiting list last year, they
Correct.
said that they're still.
If they were not in that original selection, you know, and when families went on there and said, you know, can I be on the waiting list and just have a spot reserved for the next year? We said, no, that's not how it works. If you're not selected this year, if you don't want to get in this year, next year it will be treated, everybody's in that same pool. Excluding the siblings, they will be in.
okay, so the siblings are in, everybody else goes into a pool every year.
Yes.
And then however many seats are available, it's just a random lottery
Yes.
that shows them? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I know you know where I'm going with my next question, okay, so, because kids want to get into the school, we have more kids that want to get in than we have places for, 66, okay? So now, what do we tell the parents? Do they have, we just tell them to reapply, right? Okay, and now, since it's random, it matters not whether the student is a fourth grader or going into fourth grade or going into eighth grade, it doesn't matter, right?
Currently,
It's
it does
random.
not matter.
Okay.
We want to look at, you know, trying to balance that a little bit, but there's nothing in our contract that says that there's going to be a balance in grade levels.
Yeah, okay, now, I'll think of it, go on.
Well, in looking at, we looked at a bunch of different options. When we finally came up with this one, you know, we looked at, you know, expanding a whole nother 22 students, you know, and asking for an additional staff member. And, you know, we talked about it as a CWSA staff and as a governance council. And we don't want to go too fast too soon. We want to take some time to solidify our educational practices, you know, really do what we do well. And keep that environment small right now. And in talking with some other schools that have faced similar challenges, you know, do we grow, do we stay the same, do we shrink? You know, what do we do here? It's really case specific, but we've moved a lot faster in terms of numbers wise than a lot of other schools. And there are schools that have moved faster. You know, there are schools that have expanded to, you know, several hundred kids. But in talking with some, what I would label as prestigious charter schools, they've started small and really gradually worked their way up. Wildlands School is a high school in Augusta, and they're one of the prestigious schools, you know, very well recognized. They started off at 40 students, and I believe it wasn't until their fifth or sixth year, that they moved to 60 students. And they have 60 students with 4 full-time staff members at that school. Valley New School is over in Appleton. They started off with a target number of 120 kids. They're at 68, and that's where they stayed. You know, and we're not saying that we want to stay at that number, but we're saying right now, we think that's the best choice for our staff and our students.
you're kind of guessing right now, because you don't know how many students you're gonna get to apply?
No.
I mean, based upon the survey, do you have any idea? Is it?
Well, the survey is current CWSA parents.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't survey.
So the open enrollment, we don't know that yet?
No.
Okay. So, okay, my next
And
question.
we really haven't, hit the advertising hard either.
Yeah.
Because we want to get this
Right.
solidified
Well,
before
it's
we know
kind of
what's going on.
it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? I mean, if the advertising goes well for you, that's good and bad both, right? So that leads me to my next question. Let's say, you hit a home run with the advertising, and a lot of people want to bring their kids here, which is good, that's good.
Yep.
But it also presents problems. So let's say that those scenarios work out, and what are the thoughts from the council as far as, because obviously then you're behind the eight ball, right? You've got a lot more kids that want to come here than you have resources, right? So then what will happen? I'm just trying to get an idea.
Are
of
you
what
talking for this year? Or
No,
for
I'm
the next
talking
school
like,
year?
I'm just talking about planning for the future. So let's say that you just get an overwhelming amount of interest. You're gonna have to do some kind of planning to at least cover some of that
Yep.
demand. So what are you thinking about?
Go ahead, Rich.
Doug, let me answer that as best I can. Personally, I think to try and plan for that before we see what the demand looks like doesn't make sense. It's kind of a waste of our time. Not that we don't want to think about it, but to kind of look into that future before we even have solidified our past is outside of what I think our council needs to focus on right now. We, as Clint already indicated, we have to solidify our current educational model and practices. And personally, I think that's our highest priority for all of the students that we serve. Once we're at that place, then I personally would think that we can talk about expansion of staff, expansion of resources to support other students. But I don't think we're there yet.
So, with that in mind, have you got any projections about when that might take place? I know it's a hard question.
It is a hard question. It's hard to know how fast things are going to develop. As Clint just indicated, was Wildlands that took 6 years before they expanded by 20 students. That was their comfort time. I'm sure they had demand. I don't think they were short of demand at all. Would I like to think we can get to a place of comfort before 6 years? Certainly. But I know for sure we're not at that comfort place right now. I mean, ask our professional staff whether they think they're comfortable to expand. Right now, they're the ones that will ultimately advise us if they're ready to jump. That doesn't mean we won't push, because we will. We're pushing all the time. They know that. But it really does require that comfort to be able to innovate and expand.
Sure. What kinds of things are you talking about to get to that point? What action steps are you talking about taking to get to that point?
Well,
I mean, things aren't quite where you want them to be right now.
Right.
With the student level that you're servicing. So what are you talking about doing in order to get,
every part of our model requires some solidification. We're not there on responsive classroom yet. Are we getting better? Absolutely. We're not there on project-based learning. We've had the training, but none of our educators have been in project-based learning experiences before.
Right.
This is a huge transformation of a skill set that, takes time.
Yeah.
And I want to honor our three teachers, and Jeannie's not here tonight, but I want to honor them for tackling that head on. And because when we were, when I was a part of developing some other charter schools in the past, year one looked very similar to the last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. And in CWSA, it doesn't. They are making very, very good effort in trying to make that look and feel and be a different learning environment for those kids. And it's extremely exhausting for them.
But
But
neither one of them have yawned yet, so.
They're sleeping.
But their enthusiasm is still there, and it's coming through because they really, we sat down and we said, where did you see CWSA at this point? Where is it now? What kind of things do we need to do to solidify that? Part of that is, coming together as a staff and saying, okay, we're going to do this differently and this differently, or we're going to keep doing this and keep doing this because that's working better. We may, look at the grade level span. Maybe it's instead of a 4 through 8 advisories, maybe it's a 4 or 5. Really focused in on teacher-led projects and being more purposeful in that gradual release of responsibility to more student-led projects. Barry Golden sat down and had a conversation with us, and that was one thing that he suggested, to really focus in on all teacher-led projects for the first year. And our teachers have really tried to purposefully hand over some of that student-led, type of learning and really challenge students in that respect. And that's been met with success in a lot of cases, and it's been met with, well, I don't know what to do now in a lot of cases. And both of those are okay.
Yeah.
And moving too fast can just cause burnout to the staff too, so we don't want to do that either.
And there will be, I really think that we will have to have a lottery. We had to have a lottery last year. And we had, a number of students on the waiting list to get in this year. And the fourth one down the line, or third or fourth one down the line, is the one that accepted a couple weeks into the school year, and uprooted himself and came over, and he's done great things.
I really want to honor the work of not only teachers, but as of the governance council as a whole. I've had the fortunate opportunity to be at maybe 4 governance council meetings over the last 6 months, 4 months. And I would recommend that, they're taking time to come to our meetings, and I think that we as a board should attend their governance council meetings as well, so we can understand the fight that they're fighting over there. And it's also fun to be part of the crowd and not be the person sitting up front.
Every time that they've had a meeting, I've been wanting to go, and
Yeah.
my schedule
But,
screwed up.
I want to say that, I've seen their frustrations, I've seen their hard work, and, I think in what they brought here today is very realistic. I know it took me time to soak it in, 2 or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. I might have a different viewpoint than I have right now, but I respect what I've heard and what I've listened to, and very much appreciate that. I'm glad thank you for the time you put in.
So, Clint, I know that you mentioned you have changes
That's,
at the beginning of the discussion.
yep.
Sorry.
This is kind of an opportunity for communication, I guess, this piece. As per our contract, we're within our range. The first year the language is goofy, but really what was meant by the language was a minimum of 50 students, and we were at 66 starting the year. And then the second year is a minimum of 60 students for our contract. The third year is a minimum of 70 students. We're gonna explore, some other tweaks and stuff in language in our contract. But this is something that is of high priority because we really want to communicate to families what CWSA is gonna look like next year. And so that's what we need in order to do that.
So we're really looking just to approve the expansion through the 8th grade?
Pretty sure it's going to be for 9, 12. So those two
And
changes. Right.
and we're, that actually,
The amendment.
yeah, we just changed that because we were looking at that. I'd like to make the motion that we accept amendment 1 as provided, effective.
What would be effective for the
Effective as of the signing of this amendment, yes.
Okay, so we have a motion,
I'll second
we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Mr. Freeman? You have any discussion?
Yeah, no discussion.
Okay, right, so we have a motion, we have a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And if there's any other, if there's any other questions about, our plans moving forward or anything, feel free to contact any of the governance council members, the teachers, or myself. And Brian, I'd like to, thank you for your attendance to those, because it really helped us work through it a little bit.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Do we want to sign it now?
Yeah, we got it right here. Doug was